phones without generating an Amdocs record of it. In recent years, the FBI and other government agencies have investigated Amdocs more than once. Sources tell Fox News that in 1999, the super-secret National Security Agency, headquartered in northern Maryland, issued what's called a top-secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information report, TSSCI, warning that records of calls in the United States were getting into foreign hands, in Israel in particular. Fox News has learned that the NSA has held numerous classified conferences to warn the FBI and CIA how Amdocs records could be used.
So if you know the name of a police officer, or even if you know the name just of an informant, you can follow that network of who is talking to who and basically determine that whole association of names and contacts that represent that unit of operation.
Fox News has documents of a 1997 drug trafficking case in Los Angeles in which telephone information, the types that Amdocs collects, was used to, quote, completely compromise the communications of the FBI, the Secret Service, the DEA, and the LAPD.
Amdocs would not be the only company with ties to the Israeli government. Israel was also gathering information from a separate business, Comverse Infosys, who was also listening in.
This company, inside the United States, installs and maintains the phone tapping equipment that law enforcement and the government use to eavesdrop on your phone calls.
The company is Comverse Infosys, a subsidiary of an Israeli-run private telecommunications firm with offices throughout the U.S. It provides wiretapping equipment for law enforcement. Here's how wiretapping works in the U.S. Every time you make a call, it passes through the nation's elaborate network of switchers and routers run by the phone companies. Custom computers and software made by companies like Comverse are tied into that network to intercept, record, and store the wiretapped calls, and at the same time transmit them to investigators.
We know we just had this FISA bill go through that granted immunity to the telecom companies. It was Comverse Infosystem that was setting up all these special rooms and all the switching centers where the law enforcement or the government or whoever could simply push a button and listen to your phone call. Gone are the days of the little alligator clips and wires needed to eavesdrop on a phone call. They can sit in a room anywhere in America, touch a few buttons, and listen to your phone call.
But the complaint about this system is that the wiretap computer programs made by Comverse have in effect a back door through which wiretaps themselves can be intercepted by unauthorized parties. Adding to the suspicions is the fact that in Israel, Comverse works closely with the Israeli government and under special programs gets reimbursed for up to 50% of its research and development costs by the Israeli Ministry of Industry and Trade. But investigators within the DEA, INS, and FBI have all told Fox News that to pursue or even suggest Israeli spying through Comverse is considered career suicide. And sources say that while various FBI inquiries into Comverse have been conducted over the years, they've been halted before the actual equipment has ever been thoroughly tested for leaks.
More to the point, agents within the U.S. government have been told point blank that to even suggest Israeli spying or an Israel link to 9/11 is career suicide. It's been described as the third rail of American politics. If you touch it, you die. You never get to come back again. It's all over. It's the black pit where you can never go.
But there is a bitter turf war internally at FBI. It is the FBI's office in Quantico, Virginia, that has jurisdiction over awarding contracts and buying intercept equipment. And for years, they've thrown much of the business to Comverse. A handful of former U.S. law enforcement officials involved in awarding Comverse government contracts over the years now work for the company. Numerous sources say some of those individuals were asked to leave government service under what knowledgeable sources call troublesome circumstances that remain under administrative review within the Justice Department. And what troubles investigators most, particularly in New York in the counterterrorism investigation of the World Trade Center attack, is that on a number of cases, suspects that they had sought to wiretap and surveil immediately changed their telecommunications processes. They started acting much differently as soon as those supposedly secret wiretaps went into place.
Somehow, suspected terrorists who were being surveilled by these very Israelis were able to change their behavior to elude the FBI. Israel's former Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, would boldly state that, "We are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon."
The United States has wholeheartedly supported essentially state-sponsored terrorism, both domestically in Israel and as part of Israel's foreign policy. The American relationship with Israel is the root cause of most of the problems the United States is facing around the world today.
Well, I would say this, that there's one big elephant in the living room. It's never asked about. People don't like to put it on any video or anything like that. But it is the relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel. It's the fly in the ointment. It's gotten us into a peck of trouble in the Middle East.
Confirmation of these allegations against Israel would finally come in January of 2008, when the Times Online would tell FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds' story. This Turkish translator for the FBI found an international spy ring that included Israel, Turkey, and Pakistan working with household names within the United States. She was gagged and to this day has been unable to tell her entire account. Edmonds stated that one high-level official was aiding foreign operatives against U.S. interests by passing them highly classified information, not only from the State Department, but also from the Pentagon, in exchange for money, position, and political objectives. The article stated that the Turks and Israelis had planted moles in military and academic institutions which handled nuclear technology. The Pakistani operation was led by General Mahmoud Ahmed, then the ISI chief. Intelligence analysts say that the members of the ISI were close to Al-Qaeda before and after 9/11. Ahmed was accused of sanctioning a $100,000 wire payment to Mohammed Atta, one of the 9/11 hijackers, immediately before the attacks. Oddly enough, General Ahmed would be in Washington, D.C., meeting with George Tenet, the current director of the CIA, and others, in the weeks before the attacks. In fact, on the morning of 9/11 itself, he would be having breakfast with Senator Bob Graham and Porter Goss. These two men would co-chair the initial congressional investigation, and Goss would later become the head of the CIA.
I was trying to make the point that Ahmed didn't hide the fact, when we met with him in Pakistan and when he was in Washington, that he was close to the Taliban, that was his job, to be close to the Taliban.
Graham would go on PBS and have this to say.
I was surprised at the evidence that there were foreign governments involved in facilitating the activities of at least some of the terrorists in the United States. I am stunned that we have not done a better job of pursuing that to determine if other terrorists received similar support, and even more important, if the infrastructure of a foreign government assisting terrorists still exists. Most of that information is classified, I think overly classified. I believe the American people should know the extent of the challenge that we face in terms of foreign government involvement.
In that report, 27 pages would be completely redacted.
And do you think that will ever become public? Which countries are talking about?
It'll become public at some point when it's turned over to the archives, but that's 20 or 30 years from now. We need to have this information now.
Are you suggesting that you are convinced that there was a state sponsor behind 9/11?
I think there is very compelling evidence that at least some of the terrorists were assisted, not just in financing, although that was part of it, by a sovereign foreign government.
The day after the attacks, it was apparent that some people within the government were aware of the Pakistani funding of Al-Qaeda.
Secretary Powell, one country you didn't mention was Pakistan, and I understand that your deputy has spoken with the ambassador to Pakistan.
Deputy Secretary Armitage did meet with Pakistani officials today. It would be useful to point out to the Pakistani leadership at every level how helpful they might be if we find a basis to act upon that information.
Senator Joe Biden, who had also met with the head of the Pakistani ISI, would have harsh words on the Senate floor.
And the word should go out to those who pretend that they wish to be our friends, that they're going to have to make some very difficult choices. Pakistan in particular is going to have to make a very difficult choice very soon. Words will not be sufficient. actions will be demanded.